All right, welcome back to the MovieBabble podcast. This week you've got all three of us, Nick, myself, and Brennan. We're all here talking about movies. So there's been a new streaming service, which is nice because we don't pay for enough of those already, as well as some other Netflix announcements and the movies we've been watching recently. Unfortunately, we didn't have as many new releases as we did last week with The Old Guard and Palm Springs and Relic and First Cow and why everybody decided to release everything on the weekend of July 10th. I don't know. But this week's a little bit quieter. So, kind of the biggest thing is probably Peacock, which went live on the 15th. And that is NBC Universal streaming service that I think actually has a pretty strong launch category, especially if you're talking stuff that's not necessarily kind of first run recent stuff like Netflix or Hulu tend to have. I think the back catalog on Peacock is kind of what's the most impressive thing to me right now.
Yeah, and you made a joke about it, like all the streaming services we pay for, but this one is free if you want it, which I think is really, really smart. I mean, you have like the premium version, and then you have the premium ad-free version, which is like a max of like $10, but like you get like most of the catalog. It's like 60-70% of the free version. So from my perspective, I'm kind of just like, sure, I'll take more free things. Like this is fine. I don't really know. I don't really care how poorly constructed it is or how bad the app is. It's just like free is free, you know? And I feel like we're all looking for things to watch at this moment. We're in what, month 4 of quarantine? So I'm here for it. Peacock, weird name, not as bad as Quibi though, but it's here and I don't hate it.
Yeah, so this isn't elsewhere outside of the United States yet, so I'm still going to be waiting for it. But we talked a little bit about some of the library before we jumped on, and I mean, it does sound pretty good. This is a streaming service I'll definitely look at whenever that time comes, but they have no dates released yet for international release, so I'll still be waiting.
Yeah, and I think it's they were kind of off to a weird start with kind of like you said issues with the app. But I think like the catalog is really impressive, especially because they cover a lot of TV, and I think they're probably the most competitive in terms of like a wide spread of TV content. Like I saw stuff all the way back to like the 60s TV show wise to stuff from the 70s, 80s, 90s current run stuff, which I think was really impressive. And then they don't have just a massive movie library, but I think the quality of movies they had compared to quantity was like high quality movies, movies that you'd actually want to, use a service to go watch. They had quite a spread of Hitchcock and a lot of the old Universal monster stuff. They have Shrek on there, which, I mean, how can you compete with that? Netflix is here repping Despicable Me for the 100th week, but Peacock week 1 had Shrek. So I really don't see anybody else competing with them for a while.
And the thing I do like about Peacock is that I think it is like the one streaming service that really stresses TV. And like you mentioned, like just the crazy back catalog that it has. But it's also really into its live TV. Like you can watch like soccer matches on there if you want. I know they'll have golf tournaments on there at some point too, which interests someone like me who is just a 50-year-old in disguise who really loves golf. But yeah, they're gonna have like NFL games on there too at some point. Like I think that's like the one thing that we've kind of all been missing in the streaming space. Like I feel like for most people who are still holding on to cable, like the few things that they have left are just they want to watch live sports. They want to watch ESPN. They want to watch football on Sundays. They want to watch basketball. All these things. So I feel like Peacock kind of focusing in on live TV is actually really really smart for them, and it kind of like distinguishes them from the 10,000 streaming services that we have already, because they're out here trying to do something a little different, and especially with their free stuff, like you can watch most of their live TV with a free subscription. So I think that's really smart by them. And then a lot of the other stuff is just over the top that you pay for. But I think I still don't love the name. Peacock is stupid. Like I get it. It's like I get it. It's their logo, and sure, it's fine. But like it's still kind of dumb. But I think they're in a really good place at the start. I mean, they don't have the Samsung TV app, which is really annoying, and I don't feel like watching it on my phone yet. But I'm sure that'll get straightened out, and I feel like it's kind of in a good place from the start.
Yeah, and I think they're competing a lot like Hulu did back when Hulu launched, like 13 years ago. Well, probably not that long ago, but 10 years ago at least. when it was, I mean, Hulu was free originally, and it was, oh, you can watch like all this first run stuff. It was mainly like TV back then with ads. And I think, because NBC kind of used that for shows like Parks and Rec and The Office and stuff that like was there when people stopped watching live TV and started watching things on like TiVo. Remember TiVo? Where you had to record things and you had to delete stuff because you didn't have enough space. But when people kind of switched to watching things on the internet, Hulu was kind of there, and they kind of moved away from that model. And I think people have been looking for something to kind of fill that void. And Peacock is here, and I think, obviously it's a little early to kind of deliver a verdict on it, but I'm pretty impressed with it so far.
Yeah, and I like the design of it too. I think that it seems pretty reasonable to kind of go around and like find things. But it just seems like this is what CBS All Access should have been. Like no one has that at all. Like I guess there's like a few Trekkies out there who want to watch their 10,000 Star Trek shows that they have on CBS All Access, but I feel like this is exactly what they should have been. Kind of just free version. You can watch our live TV because they're one of the big live TV like channels that are still left out there. And I feel like this is just more confirmation that they've really dropped the ball because I don't really. You have Peacock now. I just think it's just far superior to everything that CBS All Access has. But yeah, I'm gonna use it. I'm of the idea that free stuff is good for me. I like that. So I don't think I'll ever buy like the premium or the premium ad free just because I just have so many other things that I'm paying for. But I think this is just smart for them because they can just have someone like me who might use it like every few weeks and just jump on, watch, do the right thing, and move on with my life. I think it's really smart by them.
Look at the bottom line. Just to debut with the Shrek films. That's the seller.
That is the biggest flex that any service has. But I think for me, especially, just kind of want to touch on something you said, Nick. Like the menu and how you navigate Peacock is so much better than so many of the other streaming services. Like I think everybody pretty much universally agrees that Netflix is the easiest to navigate, just like menu wise. Hulu has always been a chaotic mess, just trying to search for anything. I think Amazon is really chaotic from the design standpoint as well. But like Peacock was easy to find things I actually wanted to watch without having to jump through like 20 different menus. So again, I'm impressed with Peacock.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing is that they're pretty much last into the marketplace. Like I don't think there is anything else on the horizon that I can think of, unless Quibi wants to relaunch something in the near future. But yeah, like I don't think there's anything else coming after this. So I think you typically don't want to be like behind in this kind of like ever changing landscape. But I feel like with how they launched, I feel like it's yeah, you have like your tech issues aside, but it was really easy to sign up, like much easier than HBO Max was. That was just a nightmare for me a few weeks ago to figure that out. But for what they've done, I think it's kind of like a best case scenario, really. Like you probably would have wanted to like come out like a year or two before this, but I think they took that into consideration with like the pricing and all that. And I think it just makes this just makes a little too much sense to me. I'm wondering like kind of like where like I'm missing like something bad in here, but it just looks really good.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really going to help it in the long run, and I saw a comparison of Netflix. I think it was one of the CEOs or one of the higher ups talking about how, Disney Plus, yeah, you do have a Hamilton that will drop, once every 6 months, but Netflix always has that constant stream of content coming in. And I think with Peacock, especially with the fact that, it's pulling a lot of content directly from NBC's TV lineup, like Peacock will always have this constant stream of at least television coming in that I think will keep people engaged with it, and using it in the long run, so it doesn't end up like Quibi and lose 80% of its subscribers in the first 3 months.
Poor Quibi. Yeah, I think the more I think about it, it was probably they wanted to release it this year, kind of because right now would be when the Olympics is kind of like rearing its head and like becoming like a thing, like right around this time of the summer. So obviously that's next year. So they probably wanted to time it right around that. But yeah, like next year when we actually do have an Olympics, like fingers crossed, hopefully everything is back to normal. But like yeah, like Peacock, like I'm sure they'll find a surge in subscribers, and I think it's really smart because NBC just has so many rights in live TV that they're kind of leaning into what they do really well. So yeah, I think they're watch out for them in the future when we figure out all these live TV rights and how they work out with streaming and whatnot. But I think they've positioned themselves really nicely here.
Yeah, I think one thing we've forgotten to mention is the Nick Cage collection that they also have on Peacock. And they have just like a ton of these like Redbox straight to DVD movies, which makes up so much of their category or so much of their catalog and just like the worst Photoshop posters you've ever seen. And I'm looking at some of these right now, and it's just incredible. Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus.
Ooh, I'm in.
I mean,
I'm so in.
How can you get better than that?
Yeah, the Nick Cage category just shows that they get it. Like they know that, like that's just smart. That's a really smart setup there because he's got that cult following, and it's just funny too to just have that. That they get it, you know.
Yeah, and so what you're saying with all these Mega Sharks versus Mecha Godzilla things is that they're basically taking Tubi's lane here. That's all Tubi is. It's just like this weird shit that they've thrown in it. They'll have like, occasionally they'll be like, oh, The Social Network, this is cool. But then the rest is like Galactic Gator versus Mega Shark 10 or something like that. So, hey, good for them. Good for Peacock.
I mean, it may not be the best content, but it's at least content that content that stands out.
We always need more content in this world. Content is
always
good.
Then they round it out with, like the entire Hitchcock collection. And just, it's all about checks and balances. But yeah, that is Peacock. I'm excited to spend a little bit more time with it. I need to check out The Last Temptation of Christ and maybe send Marty some death threats or something, just because that's what you're supposed to do when you watch the movie. And do the right thing. And so there's some gems in there that I'm excited to get into as they keep launching more apps within the next couple weeks. American Psycho's on there, so it's got potential. And then other than that, that kind of wraps up Peacock. But Netflix does not like to be outdone and also announced their largest budgeted movie to date, which is a Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans film that they're going to star in. It's done by the Russo brothers and Marcus and McFeely. So the Captain America Avengers team is teaming back up and bringing Ryan Gosling along. And it's going to be a spy movie called The Gray Man. Again, it's a $200 million budget, which is just crazy, especially for a streaming service where you're not really going to get box office returns. And, they make their money back a lot differently. But it is the Russo brothers, and they are pretty bankable right now. So it's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on.
This is a crazy move just to bring Ryan Gosling back out of the woods because he's been gone for a while. First Man was the last thing we saw him in, and I mean when you think about it, 2 years may not seem like a while, but in the film industry, it's a decent little bit. And I know that he has that one movie, I think it may be called The Werewolf, coming at some point. But this is the only other thing I've heard of for him on the horizon.
Yeah, and I feel like Netflix is all in on the Russo brothers. Like we had Extraction like a few weeks ago, whenever that was, which is apparently like one of the most watched things in Netflix history, which is kind of weird, but hey, like good for them, I guess. And so it seems like, I don't know if there's like a first look deal in all of this or whatever, like the contract is in it all, but Netflix is just like, hey, Russo brothers, what do you got? And they're like, well, since you ask, like we have this spy movie that it may or may not cost $200 million, but we will have Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans. So that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? And they're like, yeah, fine, because we have so much money. So it seems interesting. I don't know. Like, you read the synopsis, and it just seems kind of like it's like a duel between two killers, and Chris Evans is hunting down Ryan Gosling, which sounds kind of fun, but it's like I don't really see where $200 million are in like there. Does like one of them have like Wolverine powers or something? Like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop and why it's so expensive. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's definitely a big move, but especially when you look at like some of their bigger budget stuff has done pretty well recently. Kind of like talking about Extraction, which I think blew up for about a month and then just kind of dropped down a little bit. But then like The Old Guard, which has set a ton of records for them in the past couple of weeks, So I'm not surprised. And Netflix has been pretty adamant about just pumping out as much content as they can. And if big budget stuff is what's keeping people on Netflix, I would imagine we'll see more riskier moves like that.
Yeah, and I think they've finally figured out like their blockbuster, maybe not formula, but how they produce them. Because remember Bright, like all like yeah that, and then you had like all these other just terrible like somewhat big budget movies that they tried to release. But I feel like they just didn't really know how to shepherd those projects, and I think it does take a few years for them to like actually like figure this out as a production company. And it seems like they do have it figured out now, and they are kind of dipping their toes more into more just crazy budgeted movies, and it makes a lot of sense for them because like the old guard would have been some kind of like big release by whatever other studio in the summer if it wasn't on Netflix, and they're just taking up more stuff and they're paying more people just more money than like Universal would give them. That's probably why this movie costs so much. It's like any other studio would be like, all right, you get 120 million, but then Netflix is like, no, hold my beer. Here's 200 million for your movie. So they seem to be kind of rearing into form and kind of like I don't really like we never know how much money they have or like how many people are watching what. I still don't trust the numbers they point out, but they seems like they are really chugging along at a pace that other streaming services can't like kind of keep up with.
This is just overall a great move. I mean, they are such a diverse studio as well. Like just now at this point, we look at where Netflix has gone. I mean, they have all their awful films, but they really have diversified in the last few years. The Adam Sandler deal was big. I mean, he's got his audience, right? Now you have a few blockbusters here in Extraction, The Old Guard, even, and now this. The Irishman, a big budget Marty movie. They also have obviously the films coming up this year, the Charlie Kaufman film, the David Fincher movie earlier on, the Spike Lee film. They are a very diverse studio, and this is just another example of that, and they're staying winning.
And I think they made that big deal with Dan and Dave, the guys behind Game of Thrones. It was like a $200 million deal for a bunch of first look stuff. So they're definitely kind of figuring out more what they want to do and throwing as much money as they possibly can at it.
I didn't realize you were on a first name basis with Benioff and Weiss. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I couldn't remember because there's a ton of nicknames and I didn't want to smear them.
Right.
I think they did horrible work on the final season of Game of Thrones, but I'm not going to hold that against them personally.
They also wrote Gemini Man, so good for them.
You're right. You know what?
Maybe they deserve it.
Yeah, so Netflix is big, in case you guys weren't aware. They make movies, they put movies out. They're kind of a big deal right now. And then they have had they have had pretty good continued success with The Old Guard, which was not quite leading the top 10, but was pretty close to it in the number 2 spot. Netflix's Fatal Affair was in the number 1 spot this week, followed by The Lorax, which I don't think I've seen it this high, at least not higher than Despicable Me lately, but it's at the number 3 spot, followed by How Do You Know at number 4, MILF at number 5, Despicable Me, Always Reliable at number 6, 365 Days at number 7, the F asterisk list, as it's listed here, as number 8. And then Desperados at number 9 and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse at number 10. So lots of animated movies as usual. But The Old Guard has been dethroned by Fatal Affair, which is another Netflix original about a cat and mouse game by a lawyer and somebody who's obsessed with her. I have not seen it, but I understand that a lot of people with Netflix are watching it.
Kill me now.
Guys, I watched this movie and I hate my life. I do it for the content for this podcast that I watch this movie because I wouldn't have otherwise, and it's just not fun at all. It's just
very rough watch. I watched it about 12 hours ago, actually.
Yeah, it's not like, so it's kind of in the like, it's like every single like guy or girl from hell movie that you've ever seen in your life. Like there's like they literally do nothing different. Like there's just like the main actress is played by Nia Long and the crazy guy is played by Omar Epps. Like remember Omar Epps? He's someone that was big like 2 decades ago, but basically it's just like he's obsessed with her, and that's the movie, and it does all of the things that like you've seen in all of these movies where like he's conveniently a hacker, so he can just get into all of her phones and whatnot and play with all her technology and like kind of like smear her a little bit. And then like he's just like coming over to her house and he's telling her like, no, like you can't do that, like leave me alone. And then that's basically the movie, and it's never funny enough where it's like really campy and fun to watch in that way, and it's obviously just not well made enough to like watch from that perspective. So I don't really understand why people are like obsessed with this. I feel like there's like a weird like Omar Epps stan like group on Netflix, because remember that movie like that was always in the top 10? It was like 30-22. Like he was in that one as well. Like for some reason people like the bargain bin Omar Epps movies. I don't know why. I need to do more research on this, but yeah, I don't really get why people are loving this movie so much.
Oh, it's rough. I mean, it's not good at all. And like the motivations behind his character throughout the film are just so questionable. Like I don't get it.
Like the movie's just like, hey, he's crazy, and you're supposed to be like, oh, okay, that's good enough for me. And then then the stuff happens. But I don't know. I will say there was one really funny part in this movie, and it's totally like the movie was not like trying this at all. But when they're like when they were talking in lawyer lingo, I thought it was like the funniest thing ever, because like they just like throw in like lawyer buzzwords like every 2 words to make it sound like they did their research. So like they'll be going back and forth and being like, oh yes, did you get a chance to add the affidavit to the brief and the admissible evidence after the deposition in court with the jury? Like they just keep throwing like all these words in, and it was so funny to me. I don't know why, but besides that, Omar Epps dances for like 2 minutes, like 2 minutes or something. That was kind of funny, but yeah, besides that, like I don't really know like if anything in here is worth watching.
Deborah.
I take it back, Deborah.
I was sitting there. That happened. I'm like, and then the lady he's sitting with, Omar Epps is sitting with, she's like, "Who's Deborah?" He's like, and you don't really learn too much about it.
Wasn't he like wasn't she the ex-wife? Is that what it was? I can't even remember this movie. Oh my gosh, I forgot about the Deborah. You're right. You're right, Brennan.
I was like, I was watching it pretty much just like out. I was like, I wasn't tired. I feel like I was in autopilot, like Adam Sandler in Click, watching this movie, and then all I hear is Deborah, and I'm back into it.
Oh my god! And I don't like. It's called Fatal Affair, but like, it's weird. Like they just like kiss for a second, and then Nia Long's just like, I can't do this, and then she leaves. Like it's not really like an affair. So like even like the title is wrong. Like I don't know. Like this movie, yeah. Besides for Deborah, like it's just like 89 minutes of like cobbled together stuff that you've seen in every other bad like erotic thriller. Like it's just like, oh, I don't get why people are watching this. It makes no sense.
That's the thing, though. I mean, it's less than 90 minutes. Factoring credits, this is like an 85-minute movie, so like it's not the end of the world to pop it on and experience it. But it's not good at all. And yeah, it's Collin. Give it a try, though.
I don't know. I have a lot of Quibis to get through, so it's really eating into my TV time.
The Most Dangerous Man is really interesting to you.
You know me. I don't like to watch a full story. You know, I like to break it up. You know, if I watch The Irishman in Quibi format, it might take me a year, but I will have enjoyed it so much more.
I kind of want to see that now. I feel like 5,000 episodes.
That'll be my next project. Doing The Irishman in 10-minute segments.
Incredible. Take my money.
But yeah, that's the Netflix top 10. It's always nice to see Into the Spider-Verse up there. So we bide our time till the next one. But that is pretty much what's going on with Netflix. I didn't do a ton of Netflixing this week. I did a little HBO Max and did a little of my my own physical collection. But yeah, what have you guys been watching?
So since we are all Safdie Brothers stands here on this podcast, and Uncut Gems is the greatest thing ever. I took a look at one of their documentaries that they made before A24 made them like the biggest thing ever in for film Twitter. So the documentary is Lenny Cook, which was made in 2013, I think. But this one speaks to me because I used to play basketball. I was on the AAU circuit, and I was playing against like a lot of guys who were like tapped to like go places. And so Lenny Cook was at one point like he was a New York basketball legend, and he was like once like ranked above like LeBron and Carmelo Anthony like in high school rankings. Like he was supposed to be like the next big thing. And this documentary is like a lot of it's just like him like this camera crew just like following him around as he's like gearing up to like announce like he's going to the pros like after he finishes high school. And it's just, I mean, you guys like Lenny Cook isn't like a household name. Like he's like clearly like things did not work out for him, and it's so depressing to just watch like this sad fall of this guy who was like tapped to be like the next great thing. And like there's all these people around him who are like pumping him up and saying like you're going to be so great, and there's like this really sleazy agent who's like, yeah, I talked to like 3 teams earlier today, like they all want you. And like it's really really sad because he was a year older. He was 19 when he finished high school, which isn't all too uncommon for a lot of basketball players. But he was playing in New Jersey, and they wouldn't allow him to just play anymore, so he kind of just had to take a year off. And in that time, like he just like fell through draft boards. No one really cared. And yeah, it's a real bummer of this movie. The Safdies got involved later on down the road. Like they actually got involved after like he was done playing basketball. So that makes it even sadder when you realize that this documentary the entire thing was filmed like with like the prospects of Lenny Cook becoming something. And they came involved and like shot stuff later on and edited the whole thing together. But yeah, it's really terrific. I think this is right up there with Uncut Gems for me. Like I really love this movie. It's available on Criterion, but yeah, it is just so sad. It's just really good fly on the wall documentary.
Yeah, this is neat. When I saw you write down that you were going to talk about that today, I like the name of the film kind of like I recognize the name, and that's definitely a neat topic to look at. And it's neat that it shows even more that they're huge basketball fans.
Yeah, like it's really funny when you hear like the Safdies like in any conversation, like they're talking about Uncut Gems and they somehow bring it around to talking about the New York Knicks. Like they love basketball. They are so New York, and like this movie is like so on brand for them. But yeah, like it is really interesting because like they have like footage of him in all these like really high profile basketball camps, and there's a really famous game where he played against LeBron in this camp, and he like this was like the moment where everyone was like, oh yeah, LeBron is just way better than this guy. But yeah, it's like so sad. Like he's like friends with all of like these NBA players. Like he's really good friends with Joakim Noah, who was big with the Bulls for a few years there. But yeah, it is like they clearly like have so much interest in this, and it's just, oh my gosh, it's so sad. It's like one of the biggest cautionary tales you'll see, just because when I played basketball, it was just like, oh yeah, that guy's probably going to turn into something. Like he was really, really good. And then like you see down later on the road and it's like, no, not really. And it just shows like you have to be like in the top, like 1% of the 1% to even have a chance in this. It's just, man, it's rough. I wouldn't, if you're looking for something happy, like this movie is not it. It's very much a bummer, but it's really, really good. I loved it.
Good to know.
Yeah, I'm always down for some Safdies.
This past week I watched a lot. I watched my first David Lynch movie. I watched Lost Highway. I also watched Tropic Thunder for the first time, believe it or not. That was funny. Great time with that. But the one I want to point out real quick is Catherine Bigelow's Point Break from 1991, starring Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves. This, for me, like I didn't really know too much about it going into it. I knew that it had a decent following, and I knew Johnny Utah. That's pretty much it. And this is like, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but this is like one of the better, I think, B movies I think I've seen, because I think it embodies like it has good action. It's funny, but it's so cheesy at the same time, in all the best ways.
I am an FBI agent.
That's
Oh my
even better
God.
than Deborah.
I love this movie so much. It's so
No,
good.
it's hilarious. And I mean, I think like for me, it kind of, it got a little tired near the end, but I mean, it was still a fun time. And I just love there's kind of like this primal instinct about the film that you don't really see in most action movies. Like Catherine Bigelow, I think that she taps into something here. Like the focus is on pushing the person. Like this isn't a deep film by any means, but the focus of the movie is what are your limits? How far are you willing to go? What what are you going to get pushed to? Like do you want to feel that adrenaline? You know, and it's a funny movie though, and it's a good time.
They got Gary Busey in there too. It's just
Hmm.
it's incredible. It's incredible stuff. Just everyone just throwing 100 miles an hour, and it's just I love it.
Good time.
But is it a better time than good time?
You know what? I mean, I have more fun watching it, sure, but I mean, can't really compare.
there's definitely less
Exactly.
acid being shoved down someone's throat in that movie.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I can't imagine. Yeah, I haven't seen Point Break. I know that was like kind of where the world first began to acknowledge Keanu as an action star. But it's one of those that like at this point I don't know if I'll ever really go back and visit it unless I'm desperate and I run out of Quibbies. But
The joke never fails. I love Quibi.
I accidentally went on a DiCaprio binge this past week. I started really like a pretty good range of directors. I started with DiCaprio and Scorsese, watched The Departed. I did Catch Me If You Can with him and Spielberg. When Spielberg was going through his Tom phase, where he only made movies with either Tom Hanks or Tom Cruise, which I think is probably my favorite generation of Spielberg. But besides that, I then went and watched Inception, which was probably my first time watching it in probably like 5 or 6 years, and I don't understand why people are still debating the top at the end of the movie. I really don't think people that debate that part of the movie really paid attention to the movie at all. And then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because it's just what a fun watch. Just a great time. What a picture.
What a picture. Which of those is your favorite?
Out of all four of those, definitely Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and then probably The Departed. Probably Inception would honestly be at the bottom of the list, and then Catch Me If You Can down the number 3 spot. But I do love me some Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think this is my third time seeing it since it came out last year.
I'm gonna
I
give
feel
that
like-
a rewatch soon, for sure.
I feel like after the Safdies, I think that's like the next thing that we stay on this podcast. Can we confirm that? Is that a thing?
Yeah, it's a movie that like every time I've seen it, my opinion of it's gone up. So like originally, I think I had it like at the bottom of my top 10, and I watched it like in December, I think, and it just like jumped up. I think it ended at like number 3 or number 4 for the year for me. And then just watching it again last night, I was like, man, I haven't appreciated this movie enough. Like last night was when I really like paid attention to everything he was doing with Sharon Tate and Margot Robbie, and just like really began to appreciate all that part of the movie, because I think it's easy to get distracted by what's going on with Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth, that you're like, I don't really want to watch Margot watch a movie. I want to see Manson family members get punched. But yeah, I appreciate it a little bit more every time.
I've weirdly watched this like 4 times now since it came out. I saw it twice in theaters, and then I showed it to a buddy in January, and then I watched it just like I think in and again in January, like a week after that. I just because I got the DVD set, and then I got the digital code from that, put it on my computer. I was just kind of sitting around one day, and I just put it on to watch the first like 10 minutes, and then I just watched the whole thing. But I feel like it's a real summer movie. Like, yeah, I think it'll be perfect for August, to give it in the dog days of August, to give it a fifth watch.
Yeah, I really really love this movie. I agree with Colin. Like, about the Margot Robbie stuff. Like I actually think that was like maybe my favorite section of the movie. Like I love that stuff so much. I think Margot Robbie is just acting like that's probably like her best acting like work that she's done from my perspective. I think she's so great with like all the noise about like how like limited dialogue she has. It's like no, like she doesn't need all that. Like she's telling so much without it. Oh my gosh, I think she's so good there. But yeah, I think it's time I give this one a rewatch soon. I saw it twice in theaters, but I don't think I've seen it since. I don't think.
Yeah, I think like it does a really good job of framing her as her own person outside of because like back in the day like Roman Polanski before he kind of became the shittiest person was one of the hottest directors in Hollywood, and so like back in the day she was his wife, more so than she was even a movie star at the time. And then obviously she's kind of gone down in history as unfortunately being part of such a gory chapter of the Manson family history. And I think like Tarantino really just gives her her own space, and just it's just so sweet and kind of presents her as just kind of this wide-eyed starlet just enjoying Hollywood and kind of enjoying the life that she has without any of that other interference or the other labels.
Yeah, and she's just like when she picks up the hitchhiker, it's like man, she's just so nice. Like she's such a just like a great person, and I think that's like I think it's like some of like the best like they talk about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood being like the most sentimental Tarantino movie, and I would agree with that. But like within this movie, I think that's just like some of the most like heartwarming stuff like he's made as a director. I think it's so good.
Yeah, there's nothing. You're right. Nothing tops that.
But yeah, I didn't like Inception as much as I remember having liked it before, which I don't know. I've never been just a huge Nolan bro. I feel like he's what Tarantino was like 10 years ago, where like every film student was like, yeah, I just checked out this movie. This director, I don't know if you've heard of him, Christopher Nolan. He's kind of a big deal. I mean, I like his movies. Like I haven't seen anything of his that I haven't enjoyed. But I didn't feel it for Inception watching it last night.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think I was the same mode where like I saw this it's 10 years old, just celebrated its anniversary, but so I saw it when I was like right in like the very impressionable like 13 14 years old, something like that. And I like felt like I was like nuts over it, and I've watched it like every time I've watched it since, I just like it less. I don't know, like I would still probably recommend it. Like I just think it's so inventive, and it's literally like changed movies. Just like you look at the film score, like that, like the Inception score for all the Boam jokes, like it literally changed how we score movies since. But I just think it's like all exposition, like the entire time. Like they're always like trying to explain more about what's going on, and then I still feel like I don't really quite understand like all the rules of everything, because like they go to limbo and they're like, you'll never get out of there. And then it's like, oh, it turns out you just have to like jump off a building and you're fine and you're bad. It's everything's back to normal. So like, I don't know, like it's one of those movies where I don't like how Nolan writes romance. I think every time he tries to act like an actual person with feelings, like his movies are really bad. So I don't believe the relationship at all between Maul and whatever DiCaprio's character's name is. He's basically just Christopher Nolan. But yeah, I don't know. It's such a mixed bag for me, but I think there's just so much inventiveness in it that I do appreciate it. But yeah, this is not one for like the Nolan bro corner for me. I don't know.
Yeah, and I almost feel like some of my complaints with the movie feel like studio notes. Because it's hard to think of Nolan as not like the biggest guy who can like he's literally kind of saying and telling the studios when his movie is going to release, and like it's hard to picture him as not being the guy that has kind of all that power. But yeah, I mean, Inception was 10 years ago. He was off The Dark Knight at the time, but this was like the movie that cemented him as like kind of one of the biggest guys in Hollywood. So I almost wonder, with Tenet coming out as kind of the spiritual successor to Inception, like will these problems still be persistent, or now that the studio doesn't have as much say in a Nolan movie, will we kind of move away from that? Because it almost feels like in Inception, like there are these moments where it just slows down, and like Christopher Nolan just literally like paint by numbers the story for the audience so that mainstream audiences will understand like what's going on. and I almost hope that Tenet is kind of absent, or those scenes are kind of absent in Tenet, because he's got a little bit more power and is less susceptible to studio notes at this point.
Yeah, who knows? Like, I think my big issue with him is that he just gets so like invested in the idea of his movies that like I feel like a lot of just the stuff around it's like kind of messy. Like, I think one of my big like points with Dunkirk was I don't really get why this movie is like shifting timelines. Like I've watched it I think once more since it was in theaters because everyone loved it, and I was like, it's fine. I don't know. I watched it again. I don't understand why it has like the three perspectives of like the land, air, and sea or whatever. I don't know. I think he gets his movies are a little too fussy for me, and I don't understand why. Like, it seems like he wants to see something in a movie, so he does it, but he doesn't quite wrap it into like an emotional story. I don't know. Some of his movies just rub me the wrong way. I like a lot of his older stuff.
I'm a fan of Dunkirk. I don't love it in terms of Nolan movies, but I do like it. I think it's well made. On a technical level, I think it's pretty perfect. But I don't love the film. But it's weird. That's probably his most acclaimed film across just in terms of film critics and kind of those bodies and stuff like that. Like, it's a movie that's like Metacritic wise, it's like mid 90s or something like that. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no arguing that he is just kind of massively successful, and I think I don't think he has a single bad movie, at least from everything I've seen, which is most of his career. But I just don't connect with it, kind of like I see a lot of audiences doing.
Yeah, I don't really know. I feel the same way, where it's like there's something like withholding from a lot of his movies that I watch. I would like to rewatch Following, which was his first movie that he made like over like 4 or 5 years or something like that. It was just, I watched it probably like 5 years ago or something like that, and I really liked it. But I'd like to return to that one. But yeah, I hope the best for Tenet because it looks neat. But there's just always that little thing where I'm not as crazy about a lot of his movies as other people are. So I don't know.
Yeah, I hope that Tenet works out. I'm excited for it. It seems interesting, even if it might be a little crazy, over-explained like Inception was. It should still be good, hopefully. I mean, you got Pattinson and John David Washington, and the usual Nolan gang is all there. So I'm holding out hope for it.
Yeah, and plus Warner Brothers let him like explode like an actual jet for the movie, which is just like, sure, like, why not? Like, he's probably the only dude who can like make that happen at this point, so why not?
Yeah, I feel like he's on a level that like it's just him and Tarantino, and they can kind of do whatever they want. Like with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Tarantino was making studio execs come to his house to read the script. I feel like there's only one other guy that can do that, and that's Nolan.
Yeah, I love that stuff with Tarantino, where he's just like, yeah, like, you all come to me, read my script, you have like an hour to do it or whatever, and then I get to keep like the ultimate like licensing rights to my films because I'm Tarantino, and you will give me like he was like, I think he told studio execs where he's like, I need exactly $97 million to get this movie done. And there will be no arguing whatsoever. That's just the money I'm getting. And then eventually, and then Sony was just like, you know what? You're right. Here's your money. Go ahead.
What a guy.
What a picture.
But yeah, that pretty much sums up what's going on with movies right now. We may or may not have movies coming out in the next couple of weeks as stuff starts to get pushed back again. I think we are going to see New Mutants lose another release date because that's just kind of what they do at this point. And then there's been talk of even Tenet getting pushed back to possibly like November or December. So it's a crazy time, but we'll be watching stuff on our own, and we will talk at you next week. Remember, you can always check us out online at MovieBabble.com.